Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives. Not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. A little wet here in Missouri. We had we've had about 90 tornadoes and some pretty widespread destruction. Doc Ram's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Hey, don't do the wind-up like that, man. I know. You know, I should tell you something. In 1968, when I got out of graduate school, I moved back to Seattle. I started work part-time because I needed extra money. I worked at KTAC in Tacoma as Alan Richards, and I ended up down at KMPX in San Francisco with the first underground radio, and it was really cool. Mm-hmm. It was 13 minutes in a Gata Davida.
Yeah,
kind of thing. No,
I remember that.
Yeah,
Iron
that
Butterfly.
was a big deal back then.
Yeah. So I've been saying your name wrong all these years. It's Alan Richard?
That was my broadcast name.
Yeah.
I used to be playing something. Never mind. I used to have a rap where I would cause scramble, but I'm already scrambled, so I'm not going to try doing that. Yeah.
I remember engineering at a radio station, at a university radio station, and the guy on the air was a Vietnam veteran. And he was really frosted at these hippies. So he played the theme to All in the Family and Archie Bunker over and over and over and over. And it was late night, and we got a lot of calls that if we didn't stop, these guys were going to come. I'm talking about the hippies. They were going to come and kill us. And there were just two of us in the radio station.
Yeah.
And this guy, was a warrior. And he said, come on, bring it on. I don't care how many of you there are, just bring it on. And we'll just fight it out. Let's go ahead. And I thought he was crazy because I thought we were going to get killed that night. But, the hippies backed down. And we just kept playing the theme to All in the Family. I was back in the 70s. So, Rick, this series of tornadoes ripping through the Midwest. Last night, one late night tornado, which is kind of unusual, ripped through Jefferson City, which is the center of corruption in the corrupt state of Missouri. That's the state capital, Jefferson City. So it left a huge trail of destruction. Buildings were demolished. Gas stations were demolished. Cars were tossed around like they were toys. Tractor trailers were flipped over. There was flooding. It was pretty bad. It was not quite as bad as the Joplin tornado, which is the worst ever to hit the United States 8 years ago to the day yesterday. But some people died from injuries. And these things are pretty darn scary because what you find is debris flying through the air at, over 100 miles an hour. And what I'm talking about is 2x4s, 2x6s, all kinds of debris, I-beams, framing, trusses. I mean, all kinds of things get picked up. Chairs, metal chairs flying around at 100 miles an hour. I mean, that's really dangerous. And, I was thinking about this. I was talking with Jason, our engineer. It's kind of like war. And, instead of shooting, you've got wind and rain and flying debris. So who is going to come out of their hidey hole, their foxhole, their fighting hole, their basement? Who's going to come out of their shelter to help other people when this is going on? The answer is hardly anybody. Hardly anybody is going to risk coming out.
Wasn't there a movie called Storm Chaser or something like that, where the creeps were chasing after tornadoes to try to get in the center of it for news media?
Well, that by the way, that kind of thing is happening, and it's causing problems because now people want to have these viral videos, so they want to get up close to these tornadoes. So there are like almost gangs of people with their cell phones to try to video this, and the problem is they are reckless. Not only, I don't care if they hurt themselves, I really don't, but the problem is that they ride on the wrong side of the road, they cut people off, they're out of control, for the thrill and for the potential monetary rewards of having a viral video. Well, I hope that this teaches Jefferson City a lesson. I'm not talking about the GDP, and I'm talking about only the politicians and their minions and their paid minions. I hope this teaches them a lesson that these cheese graters that prevent us from getting out of the way of these tornadoes, these guitar strings, these aircraft cables that prevent you from turning around on the highways and byways and getting into the median and doing a U-turn and getting out of the way. I hope this teaches them a lesson. I hope that some of them, this sounds awful, I know, I hope some of them got a chance to experience what we experience. I hope they wet their pants in their vehicles, not being able to get out of the way, and saw how dangerous this is. I hope they did. I hope they wet the front seat of their car in terror because of what they have done to all of us with these cheese graters. And then next thing I hope they do is take them down. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm furious about these cheese graters. If you're on a motorcycle and you hit one of these because there's no place to go because some GDP in front of you pulls in and in your lane and pushes you off the side of the road and you hit a cheese grater, you're going to be sliced in multiple pieces, just like cheese.
It has been pouring down rain here. Today we have a overcast, but a sun just came out for a moment. I don't know what the weather is going to be like, but Suspicious Observer and this other guy from Jet Propulsion Labs, even more credible, said the predictions are accurate, that they believe there's some Russian woman, I think it was Russian, that has nailed it with a model that is absolutely going to suggest we're going to have the worst worst weather in history, a cold spell in history before 2020. That's now. It's going to go down deep. It's just started. If I were doing cones, I'm dead. I'm down. Cones are serotinous. You get a little rain on it, you have to wait 10 days to let it dry. It's been pouring down rain. The cones now are starting to rot on the ground. That was how I made a living for a while. I used to have crews go out and pick pine cones for fire starter in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, right now, I'm looking at images on the internet of Jefferson City, and power lines are down, power poles are snapped in half. I mean, it's pretty dangerous. So the only way to fix this is to cut off the electricity, because you can start fires. I mean, it's power poles are literally shoot off at the bottom, going across multi-lane roads. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And so who are we going to...
Yeah.
Excuse me?
How high were the winds?
I don't have that in front of me. But I'll keep looking.
85 miles an hour?
I'm pretty sure it was 85 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's enough to drive a nail through a board.
Yeah, we here at our house, our farmhouse, we built a solar array, and I built it with our son and Mrs. Finelli out of used pallet rack material. What I'm talking about is if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you'll see this in the lumber section, this really heavy steel shelving. So we took that and we cut it to angles we wanted. We welded it in the shape of a triangle, and we sunk piers into the ground, 10 and 12-inch piers into the ground every 10 feet or so, or 12 feet, depending on where they were. And they're really deep and they're really heavy and they're bolted in. And that helped. Well, our solar array is about 45 feet long, about 13 feet high, and it's still standing. And the reason it is because we built it to withstand the storm that we had yesterday and the day before. But I don't think most buildings are built like that. When we built our house, we used, I just did a quick calculation. The siding on our house is 200,000 pounds. 200,000 pounds. Now that's not the framing. That's just the siding, the stone on the siding, and it's all mortared together. And the idea was to have enough mass that it could withstand a storm. But if it ever came apart, there'd be rocks flying everywhere. It'd be terrible. So there's pros and cons to doing it that way. But if I were to do it again, which I probably am, I would build what's called a basement house. Have you heard that term before, basement house?
Yeah, what you do, like storm shelters, you build it a sidewall. What you do is get a bunch of milk puddles, and that's your heat sink for your wall behind you. And then you have the front, which would be a solar.
That's exactly right. So you have you build it in the side of a hill, right, or you dig it out on a slope.
You put a bunch of water behind you, and that's your heat sink. Keeps the house stable heat, hot, cold, whatever. Water doesn't change quick. Yeah. Then you have the
so what you do?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you do is you scoop out. You think of a hill that has a southern-facing slope, and you dig it out, and so the high dirt wall is like the back of the house. The front of the house is a lot of glass. And the roof is just a little bit above ground level. And then what you do is you put grass, if you want, with some dirt and grass on top. And that becomes the roof with a thick rubber and plastic membrane so water doesn't come in. And now you've got a house that stays about the same temperature all the time. And if you want, you use the sun to heat the house. And if you use closed cell foam insulation, it's really efficient. It doesn't have the visibility of a house in terms of being seen from other places, and the wind can't take it down. Rick, I've got a little side detour here for just a minute before we get into the things that you want to talk about. So I chose Schneider Electric as the electronics company for our solar inverter, our solar charge controllers for the batteries, the electronics. And I chose them, one of the reasons was I was so impressed with the pre-sale technical support. I had a whole bunch of questions. They answered my questions. Then I called them back with a couple more questions. They answered those, and I thought, this is the company I want to deal with because they have good telephone technical support. Well, they shut that down. They don't take calls anymore. Now you have to, so I called him, and I got this guy in, I think, the Philippines, and he said, we don't take calls anymore. You cannot call us. I was livid, absolutely livid, because I've got a lot invested in this system, and now I can only write via emails or text to on my computer my questions, and it takes forever, because instead of a quick dialogue, I've got to go back and forth, and they don't answer right away. So there's lots of delays, and I have to keep checking my computer, and I'm livid. So I sent them the text. I told them what my question was, and it was really simple. I want an easy way to toggle between selling electricity to the electric cooperative, the grid, and using the grid as my battery bank to conserve my battery bank. Is there a way to easily do that? Now, I can be off-grid, I can be on-grid, I can be hybrid, both. And I want to be able to conserve the life of the batteries if I want to. So how do I toggle between that? And that was my simple question. And what I got was back and forth emails, and it didn't answer my question. It's just, do this. And it was not a complete answer, and I was furious with that. So I didn't do anything with all these emails. I just stopped. And I get an email that says, thanks for contacting Solar Customer Service. This case number is closed. So I responded. My response was, of course you closed it. And this is a quote. Of course you closed it. You have not provided an answer to help me. You guys are not the same company that you were a year ago. And then I get a response. Hi, Vincent. I closed it because I had no response from you telling me that it worked. Well, it didn't work. So I responded to them, Daniel, I'm so frustrated with your support. Really, the lack of support that you used to provide. All I need to do is talk with someone for 3 minutes to solve this question, but you won't let me do that. May I call you? And I get a response, Vincent, find the number below. It's an installer special tech support. Please do not share it. Dial this number and then press this number to speak with a live technician. What I'm saying is, class, don't give up, okay? Don't give up. Don't let these guys trick you. And I'm talking about large multinational corporations. Don't let them trick you into thinking that you're going to get something that they withdraw. You know, like they change the terms, they change the conditions, they change the technical support. You think you're getting one thing, and then later on they change it. So just keep riding these guys. And that's what I did, and I finally got a phone number because I wasn't going to give up. Any comments, Rick?
No, man. It's always about the money.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is always about the money.
Yeah, I mean, I have QuickBooks. I spent a bunch of money, and I got QuickBooks back in 2015. And today, I get in the mail what I like to upgrade with a 50% discount. And I thought about it, and then I realized they didn't tell me how much it was going to cost. They said they would give me a 50% discount. And I saw immediately, what do I need different kinds of QuickBooks? Because I'm retired now. I'm not even doing hundredths of the cash flow business that I did when I was working. I mean, I really went downhill fast. And I tell you, why? Software, that's an example. Music, you go into music, same thing. Any place you look, it's always about for $1 more you can get.
I've got some comments about QuickBooks, and I'll share them with the class when we come back. But you're absolutely right. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and we've got QuickBooks here at the farm, and I bought it years ago, and I bought it on the internet, and it was way, way, way less expensive than you would think from most of the sellers. And here's what I found out. Right now, I just did a quick search. You can buy QuickBooks, the latest version, $189.95, $262.95. So it's pretty expensive. But do you really need the absolute latest version? We operate our farm on an old version. I think it's 2006 or 2007. So you can buy an older version. I found one on the internet right now for $25, 2006 version, and $3.50 shipping. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? If you buy software today, you'll find out that you have a 1-year subscription. Now, why would anybody buy software with a 1-year subscription that you have to renew? Why would you do that? Why? So if you want, you could buy an old Dell computer on eBay, shipped for about, $35. Monitor, keyboard, mouse, computer, running Windows XP. And then you can have an offline dedicated computer for your accounting system, QuickBooks, not connected to the internet, kind of like what we do.
All that is Excel with your chart of accounts, where you decide how you're going to, I used to do double entry pegboard system, and then I went to single entry, which is really nice, but the old double entry allowed you to understand where your expenses were. You could look at them. like, as different tables as an array. And I don't know if it's better this now. I do P&Ls once a year for my taxes, maybe to try to get food stamps, and it's just crazy.
So the bottom line is, I do not want to rent software. Okay, I don't want Microsoft Office 365 that I have to rent. I don't want Windows 10. I've got old operating systems here, and they work just fine. And I have old computers, and they work just fine.
Last week we talked about Skype and how it worked fine until Microsoft took over. Remember we talked about that
that's
last
right.
week?
That's right.
Just all of it is just crazy.
And I don't know why people buy this expensive software. Class, you can, if you've got a PC, just a standard PC, and you've got, 2 gig or 4 gig of RAM, and let's say 80 or more gig of hard drive, and a monitor, keyboard, and a mouse, you can install Linux, and it's free. You can download Linux. And when you download it, it comes with, many of the distributions of Linux come with all kinds of software. And so when you go to install it, you end up with the equivalent of Microsoft Office for free. You get a browser for free. You get pretty much way more than you would get with Microsoft, all for free. And it works great. I use it every day, literally every day. And it doesn't have the problems that Microsoft has. It's awesome, and it's free. It's open source. So I feel a lot more secure with something that's open source, and it's attacked less than Windows is attacked.
Well, there's no backdoors with Linux. That's why everybody likes Linux and Unix. It doesn't work that way. You can't, like Proton Mail. It's encryption, and you've got all kinds of securities you don't get when you buy. Hewlett Packard really came up with selling ink, not printers.
That's a very good point. Let's talk about that for a minute. Tell our class what you mean by that. The printers were like an aside to selling ink. You want me to talk about it?
With that, yeah.
What Rick is saying is you could buy a printer for, when they first came out with inkjets, for like $49, which was very, very low at the time. Now you can get them for $19, maybe even less than that. But the idea wasn't to sell you the printer. It was to hook you on the proprietary ink cartridges that would cost more than the printer. So you get a printer for $49, and the ink cartridge would cost more than that, for the black plus the color. Then when the printers became really inexpensive, the ink cartridges were double the price of the printer. So they would hook you, and they wouldn't last very long. And it was a mess. You could refill them, but it was a mess. I used to refill them. But the real trick is when you buy a printer, you need to have a laser printer. That's all there is to it. Black and white laser. It's as simple as that. And then you look at the cost per click. What does it cost to put ink or toner on the page? What does it cost? So if you figure 5% coverage, if you can put toner on that page for a penny or 9/10 of a cent, that's where it's at. So that's what I do. I have Samsung printers, and I refill the toner cartridges. I buy the toner powder, and I get it for, let's say, maybe 6 refills for $20. So I can refill a cartridge 6 times for $20. How do you beat that? I don't think you can. That's the way I do it. Any comments, Rick?
Well, cameras are next. I mean, they have them in everything now. I remember when Xerox first came out, and there'd be big long lines, because I remember using carbon paper. When I typed a letter, when I did a report, military, whatever, I had carbon. And if you had a good typewriter, then you could do 5 carbons.
Mm-hmm.
The fifth
and then we had mimeograph. How about the mimeograph machines?
Yeah, mimeograph, yeah.
And what that was kind of a blue ink with an alcohol solution, and you could make a master for a mimeograph, and you could run off maybe 100 copies.
Like
that was high tech.
Yeah.
It was high tech back in the 1950s. Rick, I understand that an asteroid nearly a mile wide with its own moon is expected to do a flyby of Earth this weekend, traveling at about 48,000 miles an hour. So it's a space rock known as Asteroid 1999 KW4. It was discovered 20 years ago, and it's so large that it's orbited by its own moon. So it's going to do a flyby this weekend, and it should be, it's going to be visible until May 27th.
Which hemisphere? I didn't read that article. I've been, sidetracked with.
Okay. It's on CBS News, cbsnews.com.
Well, you know what?
And it's...
oh, man.
So we have an asteroid.
And that's when I stopped listening. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's not going to do a flyby this close until 2036. But it's about 13 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. So it's 3.2 miles from Earth. And it's going to do a flyby this weekend. And
that'll have effects
can look
on
that
everything,
up.
Your biological processes, everything. Cell salts in your body, your mood. It'll affect a whole bunch of things.
That was one of the things I wanted to talk with you about today. So the Farmer's Almanac and other sources recommend planting your garden by the moon. Do you buy that?
Well, yeah, but I don't understand the physics yet. There's reasons about germination and the seed process of going from this stage to that have to do with light, but I have not yet seen an accurate model on how that works. I know that I'm writing a book called The Medicine of Witches, Drools, and Hags. How's that one for a title? The old-style medicines that, like culpepper and things did, that work. Like doctrine of signatures. What's red clover for? Well, it's red blood. Iron. That's what we later determined. I'm certain there's science in all of that. I just haven't seen the model.
Yeah, I don't quite see it either. And I was wondering if it has to do with gravitational pull,
Probably.
or whether it is
more
moon.
than anything else. We are affected by lunar activity, and now the sun and our weather. It's global, and then every 28,000 years, here we go, recycle.
Well, there used to be a term that was relatively popular in the 1950s and 60s, maybe even before that, but I'm not sure about before that because I wasn't alive in the 1940s. But they'd say, he's gone loony, loony. And that was a term that people would use if you were kind of nutty, that you've gone loony. And I believe that traces back to lunar, meaning the moon.
Yeah, it was lunatic,
meaning
yeah.
full moon.
People
go nutty during the full moon. Yeah, and so there is something to that because I've asked emergency room doctors about that. Several different doctors at different times. I've asked them, is there something to it? And they say, oh, yeah, full moon. They're real busy on full moons. Emergency rooms are really busy on full moons.
Do I have time to give a real interesting one, or do we have?
Please do.
Time?
Please do. We have an hour and 15 minutes left.
In 1974, the Department of Interior out of Menlo Park hired us to do a computer study on Neptune. Now, Neptune is so far away, there are no known laws that will affect the Earth. But when Neptune was in a specific geometric alignment with the Earth and the Sun, and what I did is I went back about 10,000 years to try to vet it, with a computer, there was a 99.9975% probability that a major earthquake would happen on Earth. How's that work? Storms on Jupiter affect the moods on. I don't think space is real. I think it's conceptual, and I think that astrology then became astronomy, and now it's called cosmobiology. That where you have different biorhythms in your body, and sometimes they're in sync, and sometimes they're not. and I'm having a bad day. That's because your emotions are up and physics are down, that kind of thing. They're all different cycles, and they play with each other. And we have never really understood space, time, light are all about. They're concepts.
I listened to Stephen Hawking's space-time 6-hour audio many times, and I'm still confused. So for years, farmers have been planting by the moon, and I thought that it would have something to do with the moonlight or the gravitational pull, and there seems to be something to it. I don't understand it either. Rick, is that something that scientists are pursuing, or they're not spending time on it?
I'm not hearing you. That's why my phone is terrible. I wish we could go back to Skype.
Yeah.
The physics of the moon, they're models. Nobody really knows how that works. Mostly it's about cell salts in the body and in the leaf of chlorophyll, having to do with, like you said, gravitation. But that has not been confirmed, so, pick a model. It changes every 10 years.
Okay. There's several articles on the internet now about the Pentagon finally admits that it actually does investigate unidentified flying objects. But, they keep changing the names of UFOs. They don't use UFOs per se as much as they used to. Now it's unidentified aerial phenomena. And do you think that objects driven or piloted by beings that are living have entered our airspace and are watching us?
How could that not be true?
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah, how could that not be? I mean, historically, we got drawings, we've got artifacts, we've got accounts, and Bibles, and, it just goes on and on. And so it's in our concept of possibilities. How could it not be true? Now,
so why does the government...
Are they bad? And the right answer is yes. And I'm guessing we're kind of civilians, casualties of war in the middle of something going on. We have no clue what it means. And I don't know.
So why...
But
all right, so why does the government corporation keep telling us, no, what you saw was a mirage, what you saw was a weather balloon?
Yeah.
Why do they keep doing that? Do they think that we can't handle it?
The thing that's most interesting is the amount of G-force that these things have exhibited. No one human in a spacecraft like that could live. Unless there was some other kind of physics going on, because just G-force, pulling 5 Gs. Have you ever done any flying or experimented with what gravitational force is like when it goes over 4 times your weight?
No, and I know someone who experienced about 5, and it gave him a concussion.
Well, that's right. It's now, when you watch him do 400 G, because that's what a Foo Fighter did, that's what, now we're talking about kinds of physics. I've observed something. When I've never formally studied UFOs. I was always into the paranormal. That's where the military moved me. I never got to play with aliens. We knew about them, but we were more worried about the Russians, and so they used me there. And I can tell you, there's something else going on here, and I don't have a clue what Nephilim or Anunnaki or what any of that means, except Buzz Aldrin's interested in that. And so was Ed Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell was a personal friend of mine. I did work with him at Mission Control, and I can tell you, these guys, they believe there's things going on out there, and they saw them. And so whatever that means, No. Now, when you look at a UFO, how you can tell it's a UFO is that you see a thing moving, but when you look at it, it appears to come right straight at you then. That's because, probably, they're using magnetic monopoles and they're phase shifting. And so they're not moving in a straight line. A UFO does not move like in a straight line. It appears optically as a jerky. It jerks. Just like that. And I don't know how to describe that physics yet. But there is. I got lots of friends.
Let's talk more about this. Let's talk more about this when we come back, because there's a UFO hotspot. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. We've been talking about UFOs. Rick, do you think that these extraterrestrials breathe air, or do they not need to breathe air?
Yes. An alien could be black goo. Mm-hmm. A single-celled organism, hive-formed, like bees or what. I don't know. I can imagine it. That alone is enough to make it real, because that is how it works, or at least that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. I want to believe.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to be one of Carl Sagan's students at the university, and he was talking about we are not alone. I mean, it's ridiculous to believe that we're alone.
Oh, we used to think we're the center of the universe. And everything revolved around us. Ding, 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 ding. Then, it goes downhill from there. But
from what I see of the GDP, we're not worthy of that honor.
Here's the bottom line. There are forms of cetacean on this planet that have bigger brain cases than man, and some of them maybe way more technically advanced than man, like a bottlenose dolphin. I got to go to Key Largo, and I spent time in dolphin tanks after I did work with John Lilly, and I felt like I was in the presence of aliens. Thanks for all the fish.
So do you go into tanks, metal tanks, and meditate?
What do you mean?
Well, there are people I know who have metal tanks.
You mean sensory deprivation tanks that
yes,
I can go take instead of drugs? I did. I don't. There's a lot better way. You can use a Ford hammer. That works pretty good. But whips, that's the way the Jesuits did it. I can tell you that something else is going on, and we don't even have a clue yet, because we got 8,000-9,000 years of technology, and we had technologies. I've watched the Buddhists up in Tibet. They have these big long horns, and they're like, in the Alps, and you put so many of them together in a certain geometric array, and it so compresses the air in resonance that it lifts large rocks off the ground, push them with a finger. I've seen it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something that I wanted to talk about with you.
You want to talk about everything?
Well, seriously. I've observed a phenomenon that I can only explain one way. So at our farmhouse, we have, I built the plumbing. I know exactly how all of our plumbing goes. And it runs downhill, and it works. And we've never had a problem. And it's PVC and CPVC. So all of the drain lines are PVC. And they are to code. And we have a septic system. And we have multiple vents to vent the plumbing so that the water running downhill into the septic system that displaces the air in the septic system can be vented through the stacks in the roof. It's just the way it's done. It's not that I invented anything. It's just common standard code plumbing practices. Well, in the last couple of months, I've noticed in the middle of the night, I will hear the sink trap gurgling. It will gurgle and it'll stop gurgling. So what's happening is there is a pressure differential between the septic system and the atmosphere that is great enough that the vent stack cannot accommodate the pressure differential. Now, the only thing that I can come up with, well, there's a couple things. One, our vent system is plugged up, and that's not the case. Another is that the outside pressure, the atmospheric pressure, is changing up and down, and that, I believe, is the case. Does that make sense to you? That would cause...
Yeah. That's perking. That's called perk. And,
but why? Why is this happening now, and it's never happened before here at our farm?
Well, maybe you haven't noticed it before, or you changed the movie by reconnecting dots. You saw it one way, and now you see it this way.
Well, this is a physical. This is physical. There's no question.
Well, yes, but you're starting with assumptions, and assume truths and definitions. And first, assume truth. Let me give you an example. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Oops. Now we have tunneling, event horizons, precursor waves in solid-state physics. Space is curved. Okay? If space is curved, I can, with simple mathematics, prove the Earth's flat. Is it flat or round? Yes. It isn't one way or another. It's the way we choose to see something and the assumptions that we're making. That's what consciousness is. It's not about, the laws of the universe. Good luck with that one, man. I don't know of any law other than Maxwell's right-hand rule of thumb that has lasted longer than 20 years. Newsflash.
You're talking about current flow.
And magnetic fields. Right-hand rule. Yeah, that's it. That was that law. This concept of a toe, theory of everything. Good luck with that.
Okay.
Because...
But Rick, I really believe that the atmospheric pressure is changing up and down.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what newsflash. Solar minimums, weather. Go get a grip. Yeah. We're in cycles, and it's not good. Or
good. It's not good. It's not good.
Because it doesn't have to be bad. It means the infrastructure is also going to get whipped, and that means we have an opportunity to change things we didn't like. How's that one work?
Yeah, I like that. I like that because
But say there's other ways of looking at things that allow you access to universes that if you didn't, like, for example, is a Christian, if two aliens walked in the door, could a Christian see them? Yeah, I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. There it goes downhill, man. I mean, if these are the realities, time is not real. It's a concept of the way we see things, and it's different for each of us. And what you're trying to do is go from the profane into the sacred, where it becomes timeless. That's how you cheat death.
Rick, I'm thinking about, I'm still stuck on this gurgling. I'll tell you why. There's no question in my mind that it's happening. And it had been happening for a couple of months, but it happened a lot last night. And it happened pretty much within minutes.
What were you smoking?
Of the tornado.
I'm kidding.
But listen, seriously, it happened within minutes of the recorded time of the tornado that took apart Jefferson City. What I'm saying is, I think that these pressure anomalies are real. They're happening, and if I had the equipment rather than just my sink gurgling, I could measure these atmospheric pressure changes, which I absolutely, positively am convinced are real, and they are not something that's happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago. Something is happening to the atmospheric pressure. I'm convinced of it. But
water is changing. We know that water has different phases. We know that as the different phenomena occurs, we're going to have structured water over, Willard water. How's that one? And is what you're observing is a process of how you're changing the dots in the way you connect them.
okay, so now I'm thinking that I can build a very simple elementary school device, which would be a capillary tube in a dish of water. And the pressure of the atmosphere will press down on that little dish of water and push the water up the capillary tube, right? So I should be able to, well, that's what a barometer is, right?
I wrote a manga comic on that very concept of how a water girl gets to the top of the tree. And, you were saying the concepts of Venturi tubes and that whole basic physics of differential pressures. What happens next in membrane physics. And the way you go from one system to the next. That's what membrane physics is, going from subsystem 1 to subsystem 2, like a bacteria now talking to a single-celled organism.
Rick, if we extrapolate, if I'm right about this, if we extrapolate this out and we look at the ocean as a big dish of water,
now we got a problem. Mission control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a huge problem because all right.
In fact,
water.
Last night, Russell Rangy and I are talking to an old 20-year Navy man that when they found he was gifted, so they discovered remote viewing and they put him in the basement doing creepy things. He's retired now, and he's starting to do it again, and he's got some concerns, wants to know what he should do. And, being a whistleblower is not necessarily your best interest. And so I don't know what to do. And if you'd like to get brought in on this, it's like watching a UFO blow up a Russian ship. It just happened. And something happened. Was it a Venturi tube in water? You don't know.
We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, I'm holding in my hand something that is really kind of cool. This is a temperature gauge, a humidity gauge, and a barometer. And it's in this frame. And my son bought this for me because he thought it was kind of neat. And it's an award that was given to someone. And it says Rambler Means Business, March through June 1961. Top Businessman's Award to a motor car company in Missouri. And Rambler, meaning the Rambler Car Company, 1961. And what this is it literally hangs on the wall, and you can read at a distance through the dials the barometric pressure, the temperature, and the humidity. Now, we don't even look at that kind of stuff. Who has something like that today? You don't see those kinds of things in stores where you can watch the humidity change, the barometric pressure change, and the temperature change. We're not interested in that anymore.
Yeah, I have the boy scientist and the boy engineer, those books, with little projects that you did when you were in Boy Scouts. I love Radio Shack. I love these kids. I loved it all, man. You're just a jack of all trades. That's actually what a physicist is. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. That's what a good farmer is. Farmer is like a physicist, has to have at least 5 or 6 skill sets. Welding, animal husbandry, that kind of thing. I mean, he has to be an expert in that, half a dozen things. Farming is kind of important from a social point of view, not just food.
Interesting you say that, because we farmers are looked down on by most people.
I know. Yeah, that's because they're up in space. No, man. Look, I don't look down on farmers, man. I've shoveled my shit, and let me tell you, man, it's a lot of work. So,
well, and you're right. Farming is a lot of.
Man, I'm embarrassed.
Farming is a lot of work, and it's 24/7, and it doesn't
Yeah, you live
stop.
it. It isn't about money. That's the bottom line. You know, if I had been a lawyer or a doctor, it's half the effort of physics, and they make way more money at the end of the day.
Well, everybody makes more money. Everybody makes more money than farmers. Well, actually, that may not be true.
You make more money than I do, I'll bet you.
I was going to say authors. Some authors don't make as much as farmers, but no, farmers are pretty much, the bottom of the economic scale. I mean, we have stuff, we have tools, we have land, but no money, and it seems like money just comes and goes. Whenever we have money, we have to buy more things.
There it is. Money changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't believe it.
I was listening to
it's a bunch of hooey, hot air. Don't worry. We'll like Dorito corn chips. We'll just print some more.
I was listening to the radio, and I heard some financiers from Wall Street talking. You know, people look up to them and think, "Wow, that guy's really sharp."
Trader,
yeah. However, give them a shovel, and what can they do with it? Say there's a bulldozer.
That's what they're doing in the bullpit. That's what they're shoveling it. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's all a metaphor. I wouldn't want to do that. Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, you make and lose a fortune in 2 hours.
Yes. So the Pentagon is finally admitting that they are tracking UFOs. And by the way, one of the things that I'd love to discuss this with you. You've talked to Ed Mitchell, right?
I did. What?
You talked to Edwin Mitchell, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was 61. Yeah.
Do you believe?
71, 70.
Do you believe that we put some guys on top of a rocket in a capsule, blasted off from Earth, orbited Earth?
How about
then
Dr. Strangelove, where he rides that missile down the atomic bomb? Yeehaw!
Yeah, and then we left Earth orbit. Orbited the moon, got out of the capsule, walked around in space, got back in the capsule, landed on the moon, then took off from the moon and came home. Do you believe we did all that? Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, since the late 1960s, we've been told by the mass media that we landed on the moon. And so my question was, it's really a serious question. So do you think that we literally put a few guys on top of a rocket in a capsule, blasted off, circled the Earth, got into an near Earth orbit, then left that orbit, traveled to the moon, orbited the moon, got out of the capsule, kind of walked around in space, got back in the capsule, then landed on the moon, and then got back in that, walked around, left some footprints, one giant step for man, and then got back in the capsule and came home.
Down and said that he helped direct that show. So who knows? Yes, I think we've been to the moon. Did we do it when we said we did? And media? No, I don't believe that at all. I like the part when the scientist comes up to the president of the United States and he says, "Do you want to see one?"
Well, there's really interesting things. Like, for example, it's illegal to own a piece of moon debris. Why is that? Why is it illegal?
Well, there it is. And imagine what China thinks about all that.
Yeah, I don't think we did it. I really don't think we.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, how did we get through the Van Allen?
I don't think we did it when we did it. When we said we did.
Yeah. And what about the Van Allen?
People that did do it are probably dead or dying because of genetics and radiation exposure.
Yeah, you're talking about the Van Allen radiation belt, right?
Man, that's a hot cylinder to go through. Good luck with that. That's one of the reasons we're alive down here. Screens all that shit out. They've tried sending in experiments mice to the Mars, and nothing arrives alive. That's
okay.
That.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there's another strange phenomenon that's happening here at the farm. And that's one of the things that we do at USA Prepares. We talk about observations, things that we actually see that maybe others might not have the opportunity to see the way we do them, or we see them from ground zero. So here's what's happening around the farmhouse. We have cats and dogs and chickens and cows, and then there's wildlife, deer and so forth, raccoons. What I'm noticing is our domestic animals, the cats and dogs and chickens, want to follow us around. They want to be with us. And literally, I mentioned on the air that Mrs. Finelli and I will take a walk down the driveway. We'll look at the fields. We'll look at the grass. We'll look at the orchard. We'll, look at what's happening on our farm. And the dogs will follow us. I'll say, hey, who wants to go for a walk? And they'll all get excited. And the dogs will follow us. And then the cats will follow us. And then the chickens will follow us.
Yeah.
And I'm serious.
Nobody
wants to be left out.
And have you noticed anything about flies on your cow pies? And how there are
not
less
so many
flies? And there are
Where
less
did they go? Where did the flies go?
Well, that's what happens with the radiation belts changing. The sun goes from yellow to white. It starts with the insects and moves up the food chain.
Okay, so and that explains where did the birds go? Because literally,
Alfred Hitchcock did a movie, and I think there was a bunch of, there's all kinds of things going on regarding birds, and none of them make sense, including like bees. The bees, what's happening with bees is that they use bandwidths and microwave band for navigation, and you put 5G up, and they're confused. It doesn't kill them, but they can't go anywhere. They're like they're scrambled. And they've done experiments. I saw it. It was incredible. That's why they're using now shungite and shungite-like fluorine materials to shield beehives. The honey is different. The propolis, is different. And the bees, it's a line of sight. So you got a 5G, and bees are all moving around flowers, and then all of a sudden gets up in a line of sight with microwave band, and they're down for the count. They can't navigate. Can't find the honey. Can't do anything. Can't think. Maybe something to do with microwave bands and the way bees communicate information, like dancing. And I don't know that, but synthetic telepathy is 0.3 to 3 gigahertz for man. And so I don't know. I'm throwing a little, if I throw another log on the fire and let it burn.
Okay, I've got a suggestion, class. So we know that these microwave towers are killing us. We know that they're killing the wildlife. We know that they're killing the bees. Okay, and we know that the birds require the insects to thrive. So we have very few birds around the farm anymore. We really do. It used to be back in the 1950s and 60s when I was growing up, you used to see birds on power lines and telephone wires. I mean, right up and literally hundreds of them on the same power line. You don't see it anymore. At least around here you don't. Well, so here's my thought. Let's say you are in the business of providing food, as I am, and you come across someone who works for Verizon and he wants to buy your product. He wants to buy food, or U.S. Cellular, or T-Mobile. Any employee whatsoever, whether it be a customer service agent or a technician, I'm going to have a new policy, and I just decided to do it right now right here on the air. So if one of these employees wants to buy some of our top quality beef, they can't have it. I'm not going to provide it because they're killing us. I will not help them. I will not give them nutrition because they're killing us. And you can do the same thing. You can join a boycott, an unofficial boycott, where you don't support people who work for Verizon. Okay? So if you have a Christmas party, a Thanksgiving party, an Independence Day celebration, a barbecue, and somebody works for Verizon, you can say, yeah, I'd love to invite you, but you work for Verizon. I can't invite you. I think we all ought to start doing that. We ought to start shunning these people who are harming us. Anyone who harms us, we should shun them and make them feel not welcome. What do you think about that, Rick?
I think that there's dosimetry in everything. I think that all bandwidth, even sound, infrasound was that's a real low frequency, was a French weapon at one point that would put standing waves on the heart and field, kill the enemy by giving them heart attacks. Infrasound is a force cycle, and it needs a lot of power to drive it. Now, there are things like that across the board that we take for granted, where a little bit is okay, a little bit more, like fat, trans fatty acids, is not good at all. And so there is, moderation and balance. And I think everything is good, bad, and ugly, has toxicity and usefulness. And why it goes from one to the other, there it is. I don't know.
I was reading
Dr. Veal, he's out of Florida, has done a bunch of studies on all these different bandwidths. And 5G is. When I was in medicine, I was doing the aortic catheter, and the blood, in order to use a Doppler transducer, was at 10 megahertz. But the cell wall of the heart, the aortic cell wall, was at 28 megahertz. That means it was opaque. And so you look for bandwidths that you could use for different things in the body, and that's called biophysics or biomedicine. I actually took a course from Jerry Pollack when I started working for him. He taught it. And I learned how everything has transparencies, and this is what, and reflection, this is what sets up resonant cavity oscillators and how one subsystem talks to another in your body, for example. And that subsystem, which is all over the body, the gut, is outside space-time. How's that work?
You asking me? Rick, I was reading a book yesterday. Mrs. Finelli and I bought a senior citizen's swing. And this thing is a...
Look at that, man.
Well, let me tell you, this is germane to what you just said. So this swing has 3 seats, and you can sit 3 people on it, and you can kind of all swing at the same time. Kind of like a porch swing, except it has a frame. And so I bought it at the Restore. Obviously, someone didn't want it, but we did, so we bought it, brought it home. And so I was outside reading a book, and there was a really neat chapter in this book about being on stage and what do you do if you're asked a question that you don't want to answer. So I see that you just read that book.
I'm real good at the Texas two-step, I'll tell you that.
Well, you are, and so yeah. So my question was, did you agree with my out-of-control response that I am not going to help people who are harming us? I will not do it. Do you think that that's out of control?
It's an educational thing. How about our children, what they're doing to our children?
Right.
Is that harming you? Yeah, that's our most valuable natural resource. More than ever, farming,
so I think we need to speak up and take a stand.
Yeah, and, you don't have to be hostile.
Either grow a set or take him out of your pocket, but we men need to take a stand, and I'm very serious about that. And too few people are literally speaking up and taking a stand. So like that guy who refused to help me by talking to me and solving my problem with the Snyder Electric, I took a stand. And I let him know indirectly that I wasn't going to stop. I was going to keep hammering him until he responded. And I guess he figured out that, boy, it's taken a long time to respond to all these emails from Finelli. Maybe I ought to just talk to him for 3 minutes.
I know, it's just...
And that's where we are.
You know, and these people that come to me, most all of them are valid. They're not like trolls or off the wall. Yesterday, I had a time traveler. I had saw a secret weapon of the Navy. Every day. What? And I don't know what to make of it because it's increasing.
Right. This is just another failure of the United States of America. ZeroHedge.com had a story, and it was May 17th, 2019. Headlines: Ohio school near old uranium plant closed after radioactive contamination found. Let me say that again. Ohio school near old uranium plant closed after radioactive contamination found. Goes on to say an Ohio middle school located less than 3 miles from a decommissioned uranium enrichment plant has closed for the rest of the school year after authorities found it was contaminated with radioactive chemicals. And a nearby monitor detected enriched uranium neptunium-237 at Zons Corner Middle School in Piketon, southern Ohio. Okay, so it goes on to say that the nearby Portsmouth Gases Diffusion Plant, just 2.7 miles away, enriched weapons-grade uranium from 1954 to 2001. It was operated by Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company until 1986. It changed hands and was bought by Lockheed Martin in 1995. And now Senator Rob Portman, Republican of Ohio, announced that the Trump administration has earmarked $115 million to reopen the facility, and it can employ 60 people and operate 16 centrifuges pending EPA approval. Now, here's the whole point of this. We have, where people live, a uranium enrichment facility. Radioactivity has been discovered at the school, and they shut the school down. But that doesn't mean that the people in the surrounding area are safe, because people who live there probably live the same distance or closer than the school is, because people send their children to the nearby school. So now we have villagers living in the area where we have leaking uranium or radioactivity, neptunium-237. Rick, my question to you is, how can we not shun these people who are responsible for doing this, who knew about this, who covered up the dangers of these situations? How can we not shun them? How can we not point to them? I had a stepdaughter that died of leukemia when she was 15, and it was Bendix Corporation out of Connecticut that was dumping batteries into the water system. There it is. Just like that. Okay. And DuPont? I'm not minimizing that, Rick. What I'm saying is...
Monsanto was a weapons company. Everything is screwy. It's all about money, and we'll worry about how to get rid of the radioactive debris later. Let's make some money and build those reactors. Hoorah.
Yeah, and so when you live in the village, so where do you work? I work for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. People think, it's good, fan belts, tire tubes, tires. No. They're working on stuff to blow up the planet.
How about Navy handling armor-piercing uranium and what happens later in their life? How about da-da-da-da-da? It goes on and on.
Rick, I think it's time that we start pointing these people out. Like I'm talking about the government corporation officials in that county, in that city. These people know They know what's going on, and yet they cover it up. They don't let the people know.
You know, money. Why would they want to cut their own foot off?
It's good for commerce to not tell people that they are downwind from death and destruction and birth defects and deformities and lifelong problems. And DuPont is just as bad. Bendix, DuPont, Lockheed, Martin, all of them. All of these companies that make weapons have toxic waste. And where do they put it? Well, they burn it at night, so you don't know. They put it in the streams, waters, oceans, land, everywhere they can, secretly. They all need to be pointed out. We need to round these guys up, try them, convict them, and incarcerate them. Rick, thanks so much.